We are live, and I am excited to be joined here by Brandon LaBar, there he is. He's hiding.
Kevin.
It's not his
How you
fault.
doing?
I'm excited to have you here, Brandon. So we were having a little bit of technical before we got started here, but interesting factoid, which we'll get here in a moment. Brandon and I actually have children who perform in the same kids theater in South Florida. So as they say, the show must go on. So the show is going on. But I just want to make sure, is this thing on? I literally was having technical difficulties. Technical difficulties are part of Murphy's Law. And anytime you go live, you're going to have some sort of technical difficulties. So just to make sure you guys can hear us, if you don't mind, click that little thumbs up icon or comment that yes, Kevin, we can hear you. I asked that a lot, but it's because sometimes you just don't know. And unlike at the kids theater where they can see the faces of the people in the room to see, and there's techs in the room who know if the audio is working or not. We do not. So your communication is our audience is all we have. So Brandon, thank you for joining us here on this AMA to answer people's questions about PPC and driving sales on Amazon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yes, excited to have you.
Hear me?
So
is my audio okay?
Your audio it's a little light, but I'm sure people can still hear you.
Okay, I could talk loud if needed.
Yeah, just talk loud, so as long as we can hear you. But anyway, It's good to have you, Brandon. So for folks who don't know you, you were from Pure Play e-commerce. You help brands of all sizes, including some pretty big brands, grow their presence on Amazon. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. I've been working with brands both on the 1P side and the 3P side for about 14, 15 years now. Started out working with a couple big Fortune 500 companies and kind of built up a reputation and been supporting those brands and other brands in different ways.
Awesome. And the interesting factoid, which people are probably like, well, what are you guys talking about? Like this, like kids theater. So you and I have children that are perform in the same kids theater in our small town where we live in Florida. And the interesting thing is you and I were first hooked up by Michael from Amalize, the founder of Amalize, which is a software tool. And he said that there was somebody who was from the same town. And I was like, no, there's not. It can't be. And it turns out we live in the same neighborhood. So you never know, folks.
Away. Yeah.
Yeah. You might have a neighbor who's also into this Amazon stuff that's just a couple blocks away from you, as turned out to be the case for me. I was like, there's no way. It's the small world. But yes. But anyway, so we're going to be answering questions. So you excited to answer some questions from our audience here, Brandon?
I am excited. Yes. Okay.
Well, good. So we did have Allie commented that the audio is good with a thumbs up. Gayatri says hello. And we've already got quite a few questions coming in. We also had someone else saying, hello, guys. Malik says, hello, guys. So we have a lot of questions that are already coming in. So here's one of the things that happened. So I want to respect Brandon's time. He's donating about an hour and 20 minutes to joining us on this live stream. And I want to make sure that we respect his time. So what we're going to be doing is at the top of the hour. So that's we're starting at noon Eastern time. At 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to cut this off. And so that means there's scarcity of time. And we already have quite a few really good questions that are coming in. So if you're watching this and you're like, well, I have questions. Well, get them in now because we're more likely to get to them because we go, for the most part, first in, first out. I do reserve the right to go out of order if I feel like it for no other reason than that. But the thing of it is, if you, Brandon, you were in school at one point, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it was not a trick question. So you probably remember someone says, the teacher says, the professor says, if you have any questions, raise your hand. What ends up happening? Everyone stares at themselves, right? People don't raise their hand to ask questions. And what happens at the end of class? Once there gets some momentum going of questions, everybody's asking questions, and now everybody gets their question in. Don't be that person who gets left behind and didn't get their question in. Ask your question now so we can get to it later. Unlike in your class way back when, we just have them kind of queued up where we can get to them somewhat in order. So,
all right.
So let's get to the first question that I have here. So Karan Singh asks, is it true that when having a parent listing, only one child will appear in search results for a given search versus if listing wasn't parented, then all childs will appear before taking more space?
Yes, that is true. And that's definitely one of the things that you need to consider when building out a variation. There's definitely pros and cons to it. Pro is obviously you're going to be able to merge all the reviews together. You're going to be sending all traffic to one PDP. And naturally, that's going to increase your conversion rate. Amazon's going to reward you for that. And you're going to rank higher organically. But exactly like you're saying, Karan, the issue there is that all of your other child ASINs will be buried under that listing. So they're not going to show up organically. So definitely something that you need to consider. And one of the strategies that I sometimes deploy is building a master variation in the beginning, merging all the reviews together, building up a lot of sales velocity, and then considering breaking the variation. So then you have a bunch of different child ASINs, which can then cover more real estate. So in some cases, it makes sense to do that. In others, it doesn't. For example, if you have a product that has different colors, you're probably not necessarily going to want to break them out because one shopper might be looking for a particular color. And if they don't see it available on that PDP, they're going to think that you don't have it. So they're probably going to go away. So definitely take that into account when you deploy that type of strategy.
Got it. So you're thinking about the product detail page, and do you want the real estate that people see the different like color variations or size variations on the product detail page, or do you want to take up shelf space, so to speak, meaning when someone searches garlic press, which is probably not a good example of one where you would have they see
avoid garlic presses, avoid lemon.
Right, exactly. But let's say you had color variations for the handle, and so maybe you didn't really care. You have a separate listing that's not under the same parentage for the black handle versus one that's a separate parentage for the stainless steel handle. Did that make sense?
Yeah. So unfortunately, if they're variated together, they're both not going to show up organically in the search results. And now one other thing that you could do is if you are variating them together, then you can run your PPC ads to make all of the other variants, all the other child ASINs discoverable and showing up in the search results. But obviously, that's going to cost you money. So, but something you could definitely consider doing there.
Okay, got it. So your suggestion is weigh the pros and cons of variations.
Yes.
Although if it's sizes or colors, you probably want to stick with it. Other ones, decide if it makes sense for you.
And to build off that, as I'm sure a lot of sellers and vendors can attest, Amazon is taking a very firm stance on variations, and they're breaking a lot of variations lately. Incredibly frustrating. But if they think that you are in some way manipulating or not following their policy, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
break that variation. I have not had any luck with convincing Amazon that the variation makes sense for the Amazon shopper. But that's definitely one of the hurdles that we now have to try to overcome when it comes to variating, especially if you're doing a double theme variation.
Yes, and I've seen people abuse it. Like I've seen like where someone would have like I'm just picking two random things on my desk. This holder, desk organizer, and then like post-it notes, and maybe they're
Yes.
kind of in the same general office category, but they're not really child variations because a child variation and a parent, they're the same family, so they're basically the same product, but just something is a little different about it, like color or size or color and size.
Correct.
Or something like quantity variations.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, the reality, like you said, Kevin, a lot of people have been abusing this. And it got to the point where a very large brand in the VMS space, either last year or the year before, they got sued by the FTC for $600,000 because essentially what they did is they had a item that was a top seller in the category, probably doing about 7 or 8 million a year. They launched a new product unrelated, but they merged them together just so they could give that new product more reviews, give it more visibility.
Right.
They weren't trying, but when you think about it, if it's a VMS product and basically it's a product that you can consume, it's
just for
very
the benefit of folks, VMS is
vitamins, minerals, supplements.
Oh, got it. So it's a supplement product.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So a consumable that you could digest. Obviously, Amazon's going to take that very seriously. So they ended up suing that brand, or the FTC sued that brand, or fined that brand for $600,000 for manipulating the variation.
Got it. So there could be consequences even beyond Amazon. Now, in most cases, that's probably not going to happen to folks. But in that case, I could see it like if you have all these reviews that are about vitamin D and you're selling a protein powder that's completely unrelated. So I could see how they would have a problem. Now, if, it's a slightly bigger Post-it pad that just has a different color, I don't think they're going to come after you for that. But
no. And they were trying to make an example of this brand. Yes. Mm-hmm. They were trying to make an example of this brand. It made the news, and it's one of those things where they enforced it because they wanted to make a point that they're very serious about not manipulating variations going forward.
Got it. So don't manipulate variations. Don't manipulate reviews. That's the number one thing there. All right, so another question came in from Amy Lopez. When turning off PPC, is it normal to lose rank rapidly if a listing is not having sales? What are the best practices to revive a product listing? So it sounds like Amy turned off PPC and all of a sudden rank went down. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would diagnose the situation or your general thoughts here.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think it all depends on the category, the competitive landscape, how well you were ranking, because yes, unfortunately, when you do pull back on ads over a period of time, if your sales velocity drops and your conversion rate and your BSR drops, you're gonna start to slip. And I mean, the reality is Amazon is a pay-to-play platform, and if you want to be successful and kind of maintain that ranking, at least in the beginning, you're going to need to continue to invest in. It's good to, try to pulse in and out to see, okay, what happens when I pull back on my spend? Am I going to drop rapidly? And if I am, then yes, you should quickly turn your ads back on. But I wouldn't get to the point where you drop to the second or third page. If you're on that first page, you could scale back a little bit and see what happens. But unfortunately, yes, it is normal to lose rank, just because when you're not running ads, someone else is, and they're building up that momentum, and they're starting to build up that organic ranking. So like I said, Amazon is a pay to play platform. They're going to figure out how to get more money out of you, and paid search is just probably the quickest and easiest way for them to do that.
Yeah, and it used to be you didn't necessarily. There was even debates of whether or not someone should even run ads. That used to actually be something people would talk about.
Right.
So I started selling on Amazon in 2015, dabbling in retail arbitrage, and started private label in 2016. Brandon's been doing this even longer than that. In fact, Jeff Bezos might have actually answered Jeff at Amazon.com back in those days. Which it's still cool that they give us that ability to email the executive team there. But with that being said, it used to be there were like 1 or 2 spots on page 1 that were paid. Now, if you look, like even stuff that doesn't look like it's an ad is an ad. Like, highly rated, I forget some of the other ones, frequently bought, or, they keep adding new ones in different categories. So it's about half, and most of the real estate above the fold, like before you start scrolling, is paid. So you're going to run out of sales. If you run out of sales, you will lose rank. Now, also keep in mind too, there could be seasonality to your product too. It might not just be the ad situation, but yeah, you could be losing sales quickly. So the question is, did you turn ads off because you just didn't feel like giving Amazon the money, or is it because of some other reason? And so, it was just too expensive.
Right.
And if it's too expensive, there's other ways to diagnose it, and rather than just shutting the whole thing off. Am I right there?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And you're spot on with the amount of real estate that Amazon is now dedicating towards paid placements. It's difficult to grow your business without investing and capturing that real estate, unless you have some type of phenomenal off-site marketing and advertising strategy, driving traffic back to Amazon, building that brand awareness. Amazon loves external traffic, obviously, but you can't rely on that alone. You're going to have to kind of do like a dual prong approach, invest both on Amazon as well as off. That's one way to try to keep your costs down.
Exactly. And because at least ads are traffic that you are somewhat in control of. Now, I wouldn't say control of, but that you can influence. Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels has a framework for this that I'm losing. But, if it's your own email list, you have absolute control. You send an email, X percentage of people roughly are going to click on it and go to your listing. If you deal with Amazon, you have some level of control over the fact that, you're running the ads and there's X number of people clicking, and, maybe you rank a certain high within the ad auction. But if let's say you have TikTok and some influencer goes viral with your product and you're getting tons of sales, that could go away like that because that video might lose steam. They might change their algorithm there. So that's external traffic, unless it is traffic that you are in control of, ad network like Google or Facebook, or that it's your email list. It's very fickle.
That's a great point, Kevin. Like I hadn't even thought about it that way. I just have one brand on Friday that I work with where it was July 5th, and I checked back on the account on the 7th, and on the 5th, an influencer picked it up. It went from a daily average of about 8,000 per day, and then it did 20,000. And then the next day it did 14,000. I was like, okay, clearly, of course, I went and made sure that I didn't do something with the ads, like a fat finger, an extra zero in there. That wasn't the case. So sure enough, it was an external influencer who picked up the product, was a big fan of it, shared it with their audience. Yes, it was fantastic. We sold out of the product. So we're working on replenishing it. But to your point, that's not something that we had control of. It was fantastic and we benefited from it. But now that, it's the dust is starting to settle, we're not necessarily going to benefit long term from that boost. Unless, I mean, it is a consumable product, so maybe we'll get people subscribing and coming back and buying it again, but it's not necessarily something that we have control over.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, even if that influencer posts again, chances are the results won't be as good as they were the first time, because there's kind of an offer fatigue, which is how things work with influencers. So there's a lot of weird things going on there. So anyway, let's get back to PPC. We're going on a little. I took us on a little bit of a tangent there. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We're going to try to get to them as much in order as possible. So Karan asks, how if you have too many targets within a campaign, Amazon algorithm will only select few targets to generate data for this. Is this true for too many campaigns as well? ... Only X amount will generate data, rest will be idle. I've seen this countless times now for clients and of many campaigns in order for them to spend data. So basically, this is a campaign structure question. So, going back to it's almost like parentage. So is the keywords within a campaign, or do you have a whole bunch of campaigns that have all these keywords? And what would you diagnose in your case, Brandon, if you're starting to see that not just certain keywords aren't getting impressions, but maybe certain impressions? Yeah, and certain campaigns aren't getting the impressions either.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the how I approach that, because Karan is spot on, right? You launch a campaign, multiple campaigns, and maybe you have 100 keywords in there mixed between phrase and exact. I don't use that much broad match. And only maybe 15 of them are generating any types of impressions or clicks. I guess the question is there a benefit to taking some of those other keywords that aren't generating any type of action and putting them into a separate campaign? True, I haven't tested that out, so I don't know how effective that would be. In my opinion, I think Amazon's algorithm is smart enough to detect which keywords are relevant for a particular product or group of products. So just because you're not surfacing within one campaign doesn't necessarily mean that your ads will surface if it's put into another. Something definitely worth testing. If I'm interpreting your question the right way, I have not tested that much. What I will say is, when it comes to covering more real estate and surface for more keywords and more search terms, I am a huge fan of auto campaigns. And I know that a lot of people are kind of frown upon auto campaigns, thinking it's almost like the lazy way of doing things, or it's not putting a lot of thought into it, or there's not really any strategy behind auto campaigns. If you understand how auto campaigns work, it makes a lot of sense. And I say that because I've spoken to quite a few other ad strategists, and some of them have very good connections with folks internally at Amazon who build the algorithms. And what we found out, or what was shared, is that auto campaigns go beyond just looking at the keywords. They will also look at the customer's search behavior and the customer's intent. So what I mean by that is, say you're running an auto campaign and you're doing it for particularly keyword harvesting. You find the keywords that you like, and then you put them into a manual campaign. That makes all the sense in the world to do it that way. But what you might notice is that keyword in your manual campaign isn't performing as well as it did in the auto campaign. The reason for that is because the auto campaign is also taking into account other factors beyond that keyword. So it could be looking at, okay, this customer has been searching this keyword or searching this category for X amount of days or X amount of weeks. They haven't purchased what they want. So your ad is then going to surface, and then it's going to get the click, and it's going to convert that way. So don't underestimate the power of auto campaigns for trying to cover more real estate. Some of my biggest brands and my best campaigns, they have probably about 60% of our sponsor product ads are auto campaigns.
Really?
The rest are, other 40. Yes. Yep. Yep.
And that's based
It's
on
one of those
how
things
much
where
they spend or their sales or number of campaigns?
yeah, yeah. And I dig into the details. I look at the auto campaigns. I look at the search terms to make sure that it's not cannibalizing, that I'm, setting the right negative matches, that I'm not, hitting any branded terms. So those auto
Hmm.
campaigns are truly driving incremental sales. I've tried taking those keywords and putting them into manual campaigns and saying, okay, let's go after those keywords full force. We know that they convert. It doesn't perform as well.
So that's another reason why we shouldn't negate a good keyword in an auto campaign if we're promoting it to manual, because it's
Yep.
Amazon's algorithm looks at it differently. And another
Exactly.
thing, yeah, exactly. And another thing is that with, auto campaigns, if you think about it, you're getting signals of what Amazon's algorithm thinks of your product.
Yes.
So if you're not showing up for certain keywords and it's like, all over your back end keywords and it's in your title but you're not showing up for it, Amazon's algorithm might not think that it's relevant. And it doesn't matter how much we think it's relevant or this is a good keyword because, there was a lot of searches in Cerebro or whatever. It comes down to, is the customer
Right.
looking to buy this product? And does Amazon think our product will satisfy that need the customer has?
Yep. 100%. So don't underestimate the power of auto campaigns and don't think that it's the lazy way out and that you're not being strategic just by relying on auto campaigns. I used to be that way, and I used to tout, hey, use it only for keyword discovery and only spend about 10 to 20% of your budget on auto campaigns. Do what works. If you're seeing that the auto campaigns are driving more incremental sales, and that's the key, to know that it's really driving incremental sales for your business, lean into that.
Yeah, and Amazon, like Facebook and Google and the other ad networks, they're relying more and more on machine learning. And so you got to think auto campaigns are very heavily machine learning.
Yeah.
And we've gotten more to pull within it, like supplements or complements, substitutes. We're getting more ways that we can pull levers than we used to, where it was just literally what was your bid and you're done.
Right.
So now you have more things you could do. So the world is leaning more and more towards giving over control, as much as that kind of maybe gives all this little anxiety. But the world is giving control over to machines. So Terminator is happening here in the background. So yes. All right. So with that, go ahead.
No, it's all right. We can move on. I wanted to.
No. Go ahead. You had a point there. I could just tell in your eyes. It was a good one.
Yeah. When it comes to AI and automation and machine learning, it is fantastic. But what I find is that a lot of agencies just try to tout that, and they just try to say, okay, we're gonna rely on our machine learning. It's gonna make updates and changes to your campaigns like thousands of times a day. That's not necessarily a good thing, right? You need to have manual to have someone overlooking the campaigns. It's not black and white. There's a lot of other factors that need to go into it. So while leveraging that AI and that machine learning is good, it is critical that you have someone helping and overseeing that, because I've seen that happen a lot with sellers where they're like, okay, I'm going to buy this software because it does everything through AI and automatically. That's not necessarily a good thing. It can run haywire. It can end up spending a lot more than you want, and you're not going to get the results that you're hoping for.
Good point. So if you are going to lean into machine learning, lean into first-party machine learning, like Amazon's own thing, not what someone else's algorithm is sitting on top of it. All right. So next up, Amy asks, just a VA. This was a kind of a back and forth about Amy's original question, which is about stopping ads, and then is it normal to lose rank? Then she says she's got a second question. If a listing is not having sales, what are the best practices to revive a product listing? So I don't think we spend as much time on that second question of Okay, she
Yeah,
turned off
that's
the
right.
ads, or something else happened and sales went down. So how do you right the ship?
I used to have a good answer for this, but I feel like Amazon is changing the rules again when it comes to promotions and
Surprise.
coupons.
Mm-hmm.
Because my first recommendation would be run a hot promotion, 30, 35% off, to see if that can spark sales in conjunction with running ads. However, what I'm finding lately is Amazon is becoming much more particular and picky with the coupons that you want to run. There needs to be sales history behind it, which can be a bit frustrating. So that's always my first recommendation: is do something to try to jolt sales, to kind of build up the conversion rate, build up the ranking. Yes, it's going to cost you money, but so is ads. But
Mm-hmm.
with that, you're going to see a higher conversion rate. So um, another kind of example of something that I did with a larger brand in the coconut water space a couple of years ago was they were in a situation where they lost ranking, and they were trying to buy their way back with ads, and they were spending 30, 40, $50,000 a month. And I said, you know what, that's not doing it. Let's run a coupon for 35% off, 40% off. Super aggressive. We spent only $15,000 to $20,000 that month, but we built up the ranking. We got to the top of the search results. We were showing up organically. Ads, we spent maybe $3,000. So all in, maybe it was like a $20,000 month, but it got us the results that we were looking for. If we just kept on throwing ad dollars at it, we wouldn't have seen any type of change. So my recommendation is to do something that will have an impact on your sales and conversion rate, and Amazon will reward you and get you back to a higher ranking.
Yeah, do something. And to your point, it doesn't have to be ad related. Test out a main
Yep.
image. Do something to kind of spike the algorithm, lower your price. That's one of the things Stephen will talk about, is lower your price, like to a point where it's like you're losing money and it's uncomfortable, but at least you're starting to spike the algorithm, because sales
Right.
begets sales. And I have always been with you, Brandon, where I love coupons because, it's that little green badge. It kind of draws your eye. But then, you know, they've made it so convoluted to have a coupon, that it's like if you start playing with price, now all of a sudden your eligibility for the coupon starts to go away. And yeah, the whole
Yeah.
thing's really weird. Um, and so,
So to your point, yeah, I think the next best option is playing with the price. And it's, again, fingers crossed Amazon doesn't suppress your offer for having a low pricing error.
which is so weird. All right. Karan asks, within, if you have too many targets within a campaign. Oh, no, sorry. Let's get to, here's a good one. What metric do you use in measuring how PPC impacts the overall performance of ACE? And I feel like tacos lacks something. I have heard a lot of people starting to debate tacos as a metric. And I'm kind of curious, how much is it because, everyone is always looking to be the contrarian who comes with a new idea to the table? Or is it just, there's some metric behind it? So what are your thoughts on what are the main metrics you're looking at to judge success?
I so I I'm thinking about it in two ways. One way is I'm putting on my vendor central 1P hat, and that is telling, what I look at there is replenishment or purchase orders, right? If I'm investing and I'm seeing that those dollars are generating more orders on a weekly basis, I'm going to continue to invest with a focus on ROAS, because I want to make sure that I'm efficient. And then tacos, I still like that metric. I understand that there's a concern that there's something there, there's something missing, there's something lacking, but I still think it's a very relevant metric. At the same time, I think it's important to look at overall share and ranking, in the sense that, okay, as I'm making my investment with PPC, are my am I starting to gain share? Am I starting to rank higher? Am I starting to, overtake some of my top competitors within the category? I think that understanding the full category dynamics and where you stand is critical and essential, because there's a lot of factors that go into how you're performing, but looking at it relative to the category, I think is probably one of the most important things. And that's an extra step. And there's different tools that I use to do that. I license Cobalt. So basically I'll create segments within Cobalt to understand what my market share is within that segment that I created. And as I'm investing, am I gaining share? And who am I overtaking? So I think, yes, looking at tacos is still helpful, but looking at it relative to your overall category performance is good. And then just to build off of that, looking at your advertising data in isolation is super dangerous, because I think, I think everyone is kind of over it. Everyone gets that ROAS can be like a vanity metric, and you can make ROAS look fantastic. You can make it look really bad if you wanted to, but looking at how you're performing overall in terms of sales, and then in terms of how you're doing within the overall category is another good metric to look at, in my opinion.
Yeah, and another way to think of it is that, like, if you're flying a plane, you don't want the pilot to just look at airspeed. You want them to be looking at altitude, the direction you're going, the stuff with the engine. Like, I'm not a pilot, but like I know, like I always like kind of like peering into like the cockpit as I come into the plane. And they've got a lot of gauges they're looking at. And that's kind of like what you have as the sellers. You have all these different gauges. It could be tacos, it could be ACOS, it could be ROAS, it could be all these different things that they all kind of are part of the big picture, that if you don't pay attention to all of them, at some point you will crash. Now, you don't have to stare at one the whole time, or, you don't have to like constantly scan all of them all the time, but like you should have a general idea of where you're going and how fast you're going and how, high up you are.
Yeah. And I love that analogy, Kevin. It's like, okay, what's my destination? Where am I trying to get to? And if I'm getting there, then, does it really matter what metric or what gauge I'm looking at? So I think kind of understanding, like I said, the big picture is probably the most important thing to do.
Yeah, it's all about the big picture. And there is actually, not too far from where we live, there was I believe it was in Miami in the 1970s. There was a large plane crashed because the two pilots and there was a flight engineer. So there's three pilots in the cockpit, and they were all focused on this one little light. And they missed the fact that they were losing altitude, and they crashed. It's kind of a famous story if you look at like different crashes. So don't get too wrapped up in one thing and lose the big picture is the story there.
Right. And I guess I'm also curious, you kind of mentioned it. What's the skepticism around tacos? Like, what are you hearing on your side?
Yeah, feel free to comment with that, just a VA. All right, which I use say just a VA because it's literally the name that this person gave themselves. All right, so Gwendar asks, hello, I have a listing with that I engrave on a coaster, image, text provided by customer. If someone sends me a copyright image, should I refuse or accept, or depend on the case? What are your thoughts?
I'm trying to understand the question.
So this person does custom products, which I do custom products. Actually, I'm not in my bedroom. I'm in my office, and I've got a small warehouse in the back. I do custom products. So maybe I can touch on this one. I would probably put in the listing like something to the effect of, by uploading this, state that you have authorization, because like, if they send you a Miami Dolphins logo, well, you can't use it unless you can. So that's the thing with all these things. Like there's, or I used to work at Disney, which is very famous for protecting its intellectual property. And if someone sends you something for Disney, you probably wouldn't want to engrave it unless maybe they work for Disney and this is for an internal event that they're doing and they needed coasters that had, Mickey Mouse on it or something. So I would just put something on there that says, by, uploading, this graphic, attest that you have something to that effect. Most of what I do is text. I go by the letter of, if, it doesn't matter how badly they misspelled it, or I would not have used those words myself, but if the customer put it there, the customer put it there. But with Amazon, I think custom kind of flies under the radar. So, if you're saying like, hey, I will do NFL logos for you, and you're putting that in your listing, you will get in trouble. If someone sends you an NFL listing and you made them, or an NFL graphic, and you put that they have to have authorization, I would just assume they have authorization. Because, that's my 2 cents. I don't know that that's the right answer. I think lawyers would probably differ on that one, but do you have any other thoughts on that one?
I do not. I don't do a lot with Amazon custom, but I think, like you said, covering your own behind is probably probably the way to go there.
Yeah, exactly. And so something where you can cover yourself, because at the end of the day, like realistically, like someone will probably need a corporate logo for something that they need for like legitimate purposes, but like I don't even think there's a place where a person like signs off on stuff like that. And there's probably something in the terms of service for the customer too that states that they authorize this, because Amazon is protecting themselves too in this situation.
Right.
Amazon does not put themselves out there with unnecessary risk that they don't have to. All right. So Gayatri asks, hi, I come across an account in which normal keywords to negative keywords ratio is 1 to 5. And the ROAS sales are really good too, in spite of having so many negatives. How's the strategy in the long term? So what are your thoughts on, like, how much should you negate?
I think that this is always a good question, because, when you think about different factors that might play into what particular keyword or search term isn't working, it could be seasonality. It could be any number of different factors. So in my opinion, when you negate a bunch of different keywords, it might be worth creating a separate campaign, taking those keywords and then testing them out again down the road. Obviously they weren't working for a particular reason, but if you're kind of scratching your head and saying, I'm surprised that I wasn't converting on this particular keyword, there might have been a reason for that at that time when it got negated. That doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. So I'm always open to testing out some of those keywords. Now, obviously, if it didn't make sense, for example, if you're selling a trash can and you're showing up for trash compactor, right? You're never going to be performing well on trash compactor. So don't test that. But if there's something that you're surprised about, it's probably worth testing again at some point. Because what the situation or scenario here does seem like there's a lot of keywords that are being negated, which again probably made sense at the time, but there might be some gems in there that you want to be trying to advertise against.
Yeah, and I would hope for the most part those are negative exact as opposed to negative phrase, because a negative, I mean, you're cutting it off. I mean, it's very blunt.
Yeah.
Whereas a negative phrase, you're really going wide with what you're cutting off, and you might cut off a lot of really good keywords. So some people get real into negatives. Some negatives is good, but I tend to be more of the philosophy of I'll just make the bid really low. Yeah, because you never know. I mean,
exactly.
If you get a few sales, go for it.
And it's cheap. Yeah.
And it's cheap.
I agree.
Yeah, you won't show up as much at a 10-cent bid, but you might get a sale once a month. Why not take it? That's my philosophy anyway. All right. Karan asks, best favorite sponsored display campaign type, VCPM, page visits, or conversions? If it depends, which factors do you say make each type the better option. Now, yes, let's just assume it starts with depends, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. I can answer right off the bat. This is just me. I am not a big fan of VCPM campaigns. I'm sure there's people that are going to be shaking their head and saying,
"Can you real quick explain what the CPM model is for folks that are not familiar?"
So it's impression based. So instead of being CPC, cost per click, basically you're paying for per 1,000 impressions. With some of my much more mature brands, the issue there is Amazon is doing two things. They're doing the halo effect, and everything is view through conversion. So meaning a shopper may have seen your ad, or they may not have, and then they went to buy one of your products. So they never clicked on your ad, but the campaign is still getting the attributed sale. So with a lot of my VCPM campaigns that I've tested, the ROAS will be like 50, 60, $70. And it's like, that is just not possible.
Right.
It's super inflated. Like when I first did it, I popped the champagne. I was like, this is amazing. But then the next day I was like,
rich. Just run this all day long.
Right. And then I quickly realized that it's basically just attributing more ad sales to the campaign than there should be. So I've always been very hesitant with VCPM campaigns in general. Even when I did, last month I did a huge launch for a new brand for a very well-known celebrity chef. And I use VCPM campaigns there just to get a really broad reach, get a lot of exposure. And I got that exposure. Impressions were super high. Didn't see any sales come through.
Wow, that's even with probably having a celebrity chef in the ad itself.
It had a homepage takeover. Spent about $12K within just a couple days on that ad, and Bupkis didn't do anything. Great from an impression perspective, but didn't do anything. Switched it over to CPC based, and slowly started to see conversions come in that way. So that's my take on VCPM. Sponsors, then I would say following that, I like conversion based. I'm all about trying to drive conversions with any different type of ad type. The only time I really use sponsored display campaigns is with remarketing, retargeting. I've tested all different types of sponsored display campaigns, much to the encouragement of the Amazon advertising team. They're always trying to push sponsored display, and it's because they have so much inventory, so much real estate available for that. I have yet to see a sponsored display campaign perform really well for me. I get that it's all about building awareness and what have you, but when I have limited dollars to work with, it's not the first place that I put them. I do like video sponsored display video campaigns because I think they just kind of look cool, and I've been testing them out. But in general, I haven't been a huge fan of sponsored display campaigns, but when I do run them, it's always conversion based.
Yeah. And one thing to add to that is you spoke at a summit that I hosted a couple of years ago, and I'm somewhat putting words in your mouth as I'm doing my best to summarize here on the fly. No, you said something to the effect of, there are a lot of big companies that are now starting to invest a lot of money into the Amazon platform. And they have budgets. Like if you've ever worked for a big company, there's this phrase, use it or lose it, when it comes to budget. And so if you're a marketing department at a big Fortune 500 company or whatever, if you don't spend the budget, you won't have it next year. So that some people just want to spend it. So if there's not as many billboards or TV ads or other things, and they can spend money elsewhere on Amazon, and that's the new kitschy thing that's kind of a shiny penny, they'll spend it. And Amazon is glad to take their money, and they'll spend big bucks. Yeah. So Amazon doesn't say, hey, private label sellers that are doing under $50 million a year, you should really focus your ad dollars here. For the FTSE 5,000 or whatever, the biggest brands out there, the $1 billion plus companies, just give us money. We'll get you impressions. It'll probably help you with in-store sales and other stuff too. But just give us money. We've got plenty of inventory. They don't separate that messaging. They just say, yeah, do this. And so just because they're pushing it doesn't necessarily mean it's in your best interest as the seller. Did I summarize what you said 2 years ago?
Yes, you did. And I forgot that I said that. I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, you're spot on. Those brands have big budgets, a lot to work with. You have to remember that the Amazon advertising folks, fantastic people. I have some great relationships with them, but they're still part of the selling division. So they are interested in getting you to spend more. Obviously, if you sell more, you're going to spend more. So they're trying to help you spend more. What they're telling you guys is the same thing that they're telling those big brands, but those big brands obviously have much larger budgets. Now,
and they can spend that money and not care.
Yes, they have very different, to your point, and I guess to my point a couple of years ago,
goals,
not just metrics, goals, right? So they're like, okay, if we spend $1 on Amazon, we know that it's going to generate $6, through other retail channels. So they're going to invest there, and they're going to be happy with $1 or $2 ROAS because they're knowing that they're doing two things. One, they're appeasing the vendor management team, and two, it's driving offsite sales through other channels. So you're up against that. What I will say though is that most brands, while they have huge budgets, they don't have infinite budgets. So if you have a way of getting cheap clicks, do it. And there are two different ways of doing that. There's what I call, and a lot of ad strategists call, a lurker campaign. And that's basically setting up auto campaigns, manual campaigns, really low bids, maybe like 15, 20 cents, whatever the minimum is. And you just kind of turn those on and keep them in the background. And they're going to basically scoop up what is kind of left over at the end of the day. Because all those other brands, they're going to exhaust their budget. So you're going to basically get cheap clicks and you're going to see higher ROAS. Yes, you might be getting ad placement that's on the PDP or not necessarily top of search. But if you're generating more sales efficiently, so be it. It's not scalable, but it's going to be sucking up sales that you might not have gotten otherwise. The other option, and not everyone has this because you do need to have third-party software, is day parting. And my strategy with day parting is I create duplicate campaigns. I have one campaign that I'll run, and that budget will eventually get exhausted. And then I have the same campaign that essentially starts around 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So when the other budget gets exhausted, this one will kick on. And again, that's to suck up a lot of those cheaper clicks late in the afternoon when people have exhausted their budget.
Yeah, that's a good point because Amazon is not a spread it out over the course of the day budget like, let's say, Facebook is. Amazon is, if they're clicking and you're getting the clicks, we'll take your money until you run out.
Yeah.
So it's more like, you go to the bartender, give me another one, bartender, give me another one, bartender, give me another one. Then you run out of money on your gift card and you can't order another one. So that's kind of how Amazon's budgeting works. All right. So I think we have time for another question or two. So we might have time for another question, possibly if somebody wants to sneak in here. And then Just a VA says, most of the PPC campaign strategies I see are discover, performance, or profit, brand, ACE, and exposure, and ranking just differs in style of the approach. Is that still the case now? Auto campaign discussion was very interesting. What different strategy? Oh, that's two different questions. So let's just go one at a time here. So I guess that's putting names to different strategies, but I don't think there's necessarily textbook names to these things. I've heard conquest, defense, for all kinds of different terms over the years.
Yeah,
What are your
I'm trying
thoughts,
to,
Brandon?
I'm trying to figure out the question. I mean, I'm looking and yeah, like you said, those are all different types of strategies and what you're trying to do to boost performance. Um, yeah, I guess I just call them different things.
Yeah, exactly. Because Discover would be auto and broad match campaigns potentially, where you're just trying to see like what am I going to rank for? What other keywords can I potentially find that are working?
Yeah,
Performance. I'm guessing that's probably a ranking campaign, as some people would say. Like you're trying to push it hard, and you're not
yeah,
as
focus.
worried about profitability. And then profit. Well, I guess that's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah,
You want to maximize your profit there.
yeah, and I mean that's hard to do. I think we can all kind of agree that when you get started on Amazon, you need to kind of set profitability aside. It's nearly impossible to be profitable on Amazon when you start out. But just knowing and understanding, the long game, and over time, as you build up ranking, build up reviews, build up relevancy, you should become more profitable. The hard part is, how long can you sustain being unprofitable, and that's where a lot of sellers, struggle. And that's where I think trying to be very very thoughtful with what categories you're getting into. Me personally, I'll admit that I don't get started with a lot of I don't partner with a lot of brands that are just getting started. I like to work with brands that are more established, and have already gotten kind of over that hump. I'm always happy to share thoughts and recommendations with new sellers, but it's a tough game to get into if you're not willing to invest and be unprofitable up front.
Yeah, especially if you're in a competitive niche, which almost all are these days.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
all right, so I think this will be our final question. Can I create a campaign using related brand keywords? So I'm assuming they mean competitors.
Yes. Yep. I like doing competitor ASIN targeting
Mm-hmm.
instead. For me, I just see better results there. Same recommendation that I said before in terms of doing like a maybe a lurker campaign, like a low bid campaign targeting those competitor ASINs, because as we know, going after competitor terms, competitor products can be difficult at times because the shopper already has a higher intent to purchase those. But if you could do it cheaply and not spend too much on it, it could be pretty effective. The other thing, just kind of to keep in mind, is again, what is the end goal? If you are going to be going after those competitor brand terms, you need to ask yourself, am I ever going to rank against rank for this keyword? When someone
Mm.
types in, brand XYZ, yes, you might be getting some sales off of it, but are you ever going to rank there organically? If you're not, then is it the best place to be putting your dollars long term? In the beginning, when you're trying to get reviews, build up some sales velocity, sure, it might make sense there. But even for bigger, more established brands, I always ask them that question. Okay, say you get a sale off of, Glad or Hefty or Rubbermaid. Yes, you got that one sale, but how much did it cost you? And are you ever going to
Mm.
rank for that particular term? The answer is probably not.
Yeah. So unless you have data to support that you have customers that come back X amount of times
Right.
because you have a recurring type product like a consumable, then it might make sense. But if you're just like I competitors sale away, like you could,
The,
but is it worth it to? I mean, it's probably worth testing, but
right. Yeah,
if you're
exactly.
not, yeah, exactly. But it goes back to the intent. So I like what you said about using the ASIN targeting, target their ASIN, because if someone is searching in their mind, I want to look up Hefty bags, and I want specifically that brag that or um, that branded bag. If they're on the listing, they might have searched Hefty. They might have stumbled on it from a blog
Right.
post that they went
Right.
off site. They may have, looked up something else, and it's kind of like we've all been down this kind of like click trail where you just start clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking, and you don't even know how you got there 4 clicks later. We've all done that. Your customers do that. So on the product detail page, there's still likely high intent for that brand, that particular product, especially if it's a brand name, but not as much as if they're searching for,
They type it in.
Yeah, exactly. Hefty garbage bags. So cool. All right. Well, this was a good conversation. I think we did miss a couple questions that did come in at the end, which sorry, folks. As I always give the disclaimer, join us weekly and make sure to get your questions in early. So for folks who maybe have more questions or they want to follow you or learn more, is there anywhere they can go to learn more or follow you, Brandon?
I'll send you my information, Kevin, to share with them. I don't have a website, believe it or not.
Got it. Yes. This guy runs off of referrals, and I know more of some of the brands that he doesn't want to say out loud, but there's some good brands that many of you have heard of. And so, yeah, I can actually just walk down the street. It's a little bit of a walk, but I can walk down the street and knock on Brandon's door. I'll meet halfway. Okay, good.
We'll meet at the pool.
There you go. We'll meet at the clubhouse in our neighborhood. All right, cool. So if anyone has additional questions, let me know.
Yeah.
Or search for Brandon. He's out there in some of the interwebs. So thank you for coming in and sharing your knowledge, Brandon.
It was fun. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.